Have you ever witnessed a moment so raw and humiliating that the entire room froze in shock? Picture this, a lavish soiree at a billionaire's estate where champagne flows, glittering chandeliers cast dancing lights on marble floors, and everyone pretends their lives are perfect. Suddenly, a mistress steps forward, voice dripping with spite, and cruelly mocks the wife of the mansion's owner, singling out her stretch marks in front of the crowd. What happened next sent ripples through the city's elite. In less than 24 hours, the once beloved mistress found herself abandoned, penniless, and homeless. This is the story of how it all unraveled. Ava Pierce stared at the portrait hanging in the grand foyer of the Pierce estate. Painted only a year ago by a renowned artist from Milan, the likeness captured her youth and vibrancy, a vision of Ava with bright eyes, luminous skin, and a look of hope that she scarcely recognized in herself anymore. Perhaps it was because her life had grown more complicated than she ever anticipated. Standing there in her custom-made stiletto heels, Ava took in the sight of the mansion she now called home. Marble floors that seemed endless, sparkling chandeliers imported from Paris, and a sweeping staircase that spiral-curved like a fairy tale castle's. This was the realm of her husband, Jonathan Pierce, a self-made billionaire who had built his empire from the ground up. Jonathan had an innate genius for real estate, making savvy investments in undervalued properties and turning them into gold mines. At 38, he was among the city's most admired moguls. Their love story had been the stuff of legends, at least initially. They'd met at a charity gala when Ava was still a college student studying sociology and volunteering part-time at a homeless shelter. Jonathan was captivated by her humility and devotion to social causes. Against all odds, the two had clicked instantly. Their whirlwind romance ended in marriage, and before Ava knew it, she had become the lady of a sprawling estate perched high above the city's glittering skyline. But that was 10 years ago. Now, at 32, Ava was no longer the bright-eyed student who had once spent her weekends serving soup in a community kitchen. She'd found herself entangled in the complexities of being Mrs. Pierce, a role that included charity luncheons, gala dinners, and being constantly on display as the wife of a man who had everything. It wasn't that Ava was unhappy. She had every material comfort one could imagine, but she felt isolated adrift in a sea of superficial small talk and the unspoken competition that thrived among the city's elite. A glance at her reflection in the polished marble revealed a figure that was still elegant, but marked by the subtle changes of time. She had faint lines around her eyes and a set of stretch marks across her abdomen from her pregnancy with her daughter Lena. The child was a joy, but motherhood had transformed Ava's once toned stomach. Though she accepted these changes as part of the beautiful journey of bringing Lena into the world, she often felt the prying stares at upscale events. The wives of Jonathan's business associates might wear the same size 0 gowns they did at 20, sporting no visible sign of childbearing. Comparisons, even silent ones, could sting. Jonathan's love, or what was left of it, had grown distant. He was away frequently, closing deals, meeting investors, traveling to financial summits. On the nights he returned home, he seemed preoccupied, always checking his phone or stepping aside to answer urgent calls. Ava suspected his business was not the only thing capturing his attention. Rumors fluttered around her social circle like persistent moths. Jonathan might have a mistress. Usually Ava dismissed them. She wanted to believe in him, to trust that the father of her child wouldn't betray her. Still, the doubt lingered, creeping in late at night when she was alone in their massive bedroom, staring at the ceiling as Jonathan traveled to another city, or perhaps another woman. Yet to the outside world, the Pierce family was a paragon of high society grace. Ava's philanthropic endeavors only added to the aura of perfection. She co-chaired a foundation that fed hungry children across the country. She supported local artists and championed the cause of green architecture. Tabloids gushed about her elegance and refined style at every gala she attended. It was early March when they decided to host a party, an extravagant affair, to celebrate the acquisition of a historic property in downtown Rivercrest. Jonathan had always wanted this building. It was rumored that Mark Cuban himself had shown interest in it, as had the real estate magnate Richard Branson. But Jonathan's cunning negotiations outmaneuvered both. It was an event worthy of toasts, and the who's who of Rivercrest received engraved invitations. The upcoming soiree promised excitement. Little did Ava know it would also serve as the stage for the cruelest of humiliations, one that would publicly expose the cracks in her marriage and leave her heart trembling. Camilla Harrington. Jonathan's rumored mistress was set to make an unforgettable entrance, changing the Pierces' lives forever. In the midst of the towering pillars and gilded mirrors of their foyer, Ava felt a wave of uncertainty. She couldn't quite place it, but something told her that this party would not be the ordinary business celebration. She'd soon learn how quickly appearances could crumble and how a single evening could set the course for a dramatic turn of events, unlike anything she'd ever imagined. Ava's day began with a flurry of activity. Invitations had been accepted by dozens of influential guests, from tech entrepreneurs who adored Jonathan's no-nonsense style to celebrities like a renowned tennis champion visiting Rivercrest for a charity match. Even Elon Musk was rumored to make an appearance. Though he was known for his unpredictable schedule, the mere possibility added to the buzz. Within the mansion, staff bustled about, ensuring each segment of the party was meticulously planned. Expensive flower arrangements arrived flamboyant with rare orchids and lilies shipped from overseas. The catering team prepared a sumptuous menu featuring everything from caviar-topped canapes to locally sourced gourmet desserts. A renowned DJ was tasked with spinning lounge music early in the evening before shifting gears into more energetic tunes once dinner concluded. As the finishing touches were being placed, Ava paced the corridors with an unsettled mind. She could feel the undercurrent of gossip swirling. Among the waitstaff and the household employees, glances and whispers seemed more frequent than usual. She had overheard fragments of conversation. Camilla Harrington's name drifted in the air, followed by giggles and hushed tones. No matter how she tried to ignore it, the rumor about Jonathan's affair had latched on to the mansion walls. Camilla Harrington was said to be stunning. A tall, impeccably groomed woman in her late 20s, she projected an aura of glamour reminiscent of old Hollywood stars. Rumor had it she had grown up in a modest household, but climbed her way into the socialite scene through strategic networking, and some said a string of relationships with well-connected men. She was now rumored to be Jonathan Pierce's companion on his business trips, though he insisted to anyone who asked that she was merely a consultant on his philanthropic projects. Ava tried to shake off the sense of dread as she stood on the terrace overlooking the manicured gardens. She watched the landscapers prune hedges into perfect geometric shapes. In the distance, tall oak trees swayed gently in the breeze. The estate's expansive grounds usually calmed her, reminding her of how fortunate she was. But that morning it felt strangely hollow. What if the rumors were true? For months she had noticed changes in Jonathan, his restlessness, his way of trailing off during conversations, the fleeting text messages he guarded on his phone. If Camilla were just a casual fling, would he dare bring her into their shared home for a party? The thought both terrified and infuriated her. Ava's upbringing had taught her to value loyalty, kindness, and empathy. She had built her marriage on a bedrock of trust. Despite their differences, she believed in the sanctity of their vows. Was that foundation about to crack? Later that afternoon, Jonathan arrived home, exuding a sense of triumph that only appeared when he closed a lucrative deal. He embraced Ava in a quick, perfunctory hug and gave her a tired smile. He mentioned meeting with some new partners earlier in the day, dropping big names in the finance world. He asked a few polite questions about the party preparations, but didn't linger. Ava observed him closely, searching his face for any sign of guilt or duplicity. She found nothing but his usual calm confidence. Before long, Jonathan vanished into his study phone in hand. Moments later, she heard the distinctive chime that indicated he was on a video call. Ava hovered outside the door for a second, unsure if she should intrude. Curiosity tempted her to eavesdrop, but she decided against it. If he was indeed speaking to Camilla, she wasn't ready for a confrontation just yet. She wanted definitive proof, a real moment that could show her she wasn't just imagining an affair fueled by rumors. Outside, the sun began its descent, casting golden light across the gardens. Staff members scurried about, finalizing decorations. Crisp white tablecloths covered the outdoor dining tables, and crystal vases brimming with flowers sparkled in the rays of twilight. The shimmer of the pool added a luxurious backdrop. Ava felt a twist in her stomach. She wondered what she would say if Camilla dared show her face tonight, if she had the audacity to walk into Ava's home, proud and unapologetic about her role in Jonathan's life. The phone in Ava's pocket vibrated. She retrieved it and saw a message from her closest friend, Sophia Townsend, who also moved in elite circles, but remained fiercely loyal to Ava. "I heard Camilla's coming. Are you okay?" it read. A wave of gratitude swept over Ava. At least she wasn't alone in this. She quickly typed back, "I'll manage. See you tonight." She didn't want to appear weak or let on how deeply the rumors affected her. But in her heart, she felt the stirring of a storm that could not be easily quelled. Ava inhaled deeply and gazed at the horizon one last time before heading inside. She had a party to host, and appearances had to be maintained. If Camilla showed up, Ava intended to confront the situation with all the grace she could muster. After all, a war was brewing behind the scenes, and every guest was about to get front-row seats. Nightfall brought a cascade of glittering lights and chatter as limousines and luxury cars pulled up to the circular driveway. A valet staff in crisp uniforms ushered in the evening's elite. Rising laughter drifted on the summer breeze, mingling with the gentle hum of conversation and the tinkling of piano music that played in the background of the foyer. Inside the mansion, Ava stood near the entrance greeting guests alongside Jonathan. She was draped in a midnight blue gown, its sleek fabric hugging her figure in a tasteful nod to the evening's formality. A glittering diamond necklace, Jonathan's gift after Lena's birth, rested elegantly against her collarbone. The hush of her nerves was masked by a poised, gracious smile. Sophia Townsend, her best friend and confidant, arrived in a daring red dress that complemented her fiery spirit. She leaned in to embrace Ava and discreetly whispered, "I've got your back. Don't worry." Ava nodded, relieved that she wasn't alone in what might become a social battlefield. The mansion soon brimmed with influential personalities, tech moguls discussing venture capital deals, socialites gossiping about the latest fashion lines, and philanthropic dynamos praising Jonathan for his recently acquired building. Champagne flutes clinked, and the notes of the piano gave way to jazzy undertones provided by the DJ in the corner of the expansive living room. Then, without warning, a hush spread across the throng. Heads turned in unison toward the grand entrance as a woman stepped in, escorted by two guests who parted to display her in all her splendor. With a statuesque figure draped in an emerald silk gown, Camilla Harrington possessed an undeniable magnetism. Her hair fell in cascading waves around her shoulders, and the diamonds on her wrists and ears sparkled under the chandelier's glow. Whispers quickly ignited across the room. Ava's heart clenched. Camilla was here just as the rumors predicted, and she was every bit as glamorous as the stories portrayed. What stung Ava most was Jonathan's reaction. Though he kept his composure, she noticed a fleeting tension in his eyes. He tried to disguise it by waving politely and offering a cordial smile. But Ava could sense something unspoken, an undercurrent of familiarity pass between him and Camilla. Boldly, Camilla strode forward, her every step exuding confidence. When she reached Ava and Jonathan, she smiled with practiced charm. Her voice was smooth, yet there was an edge that made Ava's skin prickle. "Congratulations on the property," Jonathan Camilla purred. "I always knew you'd outmaneuver the competition. You've got a talent for spotting the best opportunities." Then, turning her gaze to Ava, she added with a faint, dismissive smirk, "Lovely party, Mrs. Pierce." "Truly." Ava, her voice caught in her throat, managed a gracious reply. "Thank you for coming, Miss Harrington. We hope you enjoy the evening." She forced herself to stay calm, mindful that a scene would only fuel the gossip. Sophia edged closer, her watchful eyes flicking between Ava and Camilla. Jonathan quickly changed the subject, guiding Camilla away toward a group of business associates near the buffet. Ava felt her friend's comforting hand on her back, a silent message of solidarity. As the evening progressed, Camilla expertly navigated the crowd, greeting guests with the poise of someone who belonged. People gravitated toward her, intrigued by the aura of sophistication and the hint of scandal that trailed her. Each time Ava saw her speaking with Jonathan, a pang tightened in her chest. Was she witnessing a business discussion, or something more intimate, masked by the veneer of polite society? Dinner was served, featuring an array of gourmet dishes, presented with artistic flair. The DJ transitioned to a soft lounge playlist, setting a more intimate tone for the meal. Seated at the head table, Ava concentrated on keeping the conversation flowing among guests, while ignoring the tension crackling between Jonathan, Camilla, and herself. However, Ava couldn't shake the foreboding feeling that this was the calm before the storm. She caught Camilla eyeing her from across the room, more than once the younger woman's glance flitting to Ava's body in a way that felt vaguely predatory. Ava felt exposed, as if Camilla's gaze was a magnifying lens seeking any flaw or vulnerability. Little did Ava know, the night's true drama was only beginning. The final act of humiliation, a moment that would echo through every corner of Rivercrest's high society, was about to unfold before her eyes. The dinner had just ended. Guests milled about, some stepping outside to enjoy the fragrant night air in the gardens, others gravitating toward the living room's makeshift dance floor. Soft, uplifting music guided the mood. On one side, a handful of business moguls debated the potential of emerging tech stocks. Near the piano, a group of socialites exchanged compliments and vague pleasantries about each other's outfits. Ava excused herself from a conversation with the city's mayor, hoping to find a quiet moment to breathe. As she wandered toward the edge of the grand living room, Ava spotted Camilla, standing with a small crowd of admirers, holding a glass of champagne. Camilla looked every bit the enchanting socialite, tilting her head back in a musical laugh, making an occasional subtle, flirtatious touch on the arm of whoever was speaking. Even from a distance, Ava felt the woman's confidence radiating. Steeling herself, Ava decided to confront the tension head-on. She approached the group, pretending she was merely mingling with the guests. Camilla's eyes locked onto hers. It seemed to amuse her that Ava was making an effort to engage, as though anticipating drama. "Darling Mrs. Pierce, I was just telling Mr. Lawson here about your incredible philanthropic work," Camilla announced, turning the entire group's attention to Ava. There was an insincerity in her tone that set Ava's teeth on edge. "Philanthropy is important to us particularly." "Children's welfare," Ava said quietly, sliding her gaze to Mr. Lawson, a real estate investor. "I believe everyone in this city can contribute to a better tomorrow." A polite murmur of agreement followed. For a moment, Ava thought this might pass peacefully, but Camilla's smirk suggested otherwise. "You must be so proud of everything you've achieved," Camilla said sweetly. "You're an inspiration to many, especially as a wife and mother." Her eyes narrowed just a fraction. "Speaking of which, your daughter is how old now?" "She's 5. Ava answered, her voice carefully, level. "It's incredible how a child can change one's body and priorities," Camilla remarked, swirling her champagne. "I heard from a friend that you just love wearing those one-piece swimsuits. Now more modest, I suppose." The subtle jab hung in the air, uncomfortably close to the subject of Ava's post-pregnancy body. Mr. Lawson and the others caught the undercurrent. Some coughed awkwardly or glanced away, sensing the conversation veering into dangerous territory. Ava's cheeks warmed. She forced a neutral smile. "I've always preferred a classic look. Besides, motherhood has been worth every change." Camilla's lips parted in a mocking grin. "Oh, definitely. And we should all embrace our little imperfections. Stretch marks, wrinkles, those sorts of things." She let out a theatrical sigh. "I guess not everyone can stay as flawless as we'd like." Sophia, who'd been mingling nearby, hastily stepped forward to stand at Ava's side. Ava felt her friend's presence as a shield, but the damage had been done. The group stood frozen in stunned silence, each person unsure of how to diffuse Camilla's clear provocation. Someone coughed. Another looked down at their drink, embarrassed to be a witness to such a pointed remark. Ava swallowed hard, refusing to let her composure falter. She weighed her response carefully, mindful that the entire room might soon tune in if she made a scene. Yet something inside her burned with anger and sorrow, a realization that Camilla was there to belittle and hurt her. "If I remember correctly," Sophia interjected sharply, "being a mother is something many of us value. Stretch marks are a badge of honor, not a flaw." Her expression challenged Camilla to continue her attack. Camilla raised an eyebrow, apparently entertained by Sophia's defense. "Oh, I completely agree, darling. My apologies if it sounded otherwise." She placed a hand over her heart in a gesture of insincere remorse. "Truly, I admire any woman who can juggle family and social responsibilities so gracefully. I just hope for Mrs. Pierce's sake that society remains, shall we say, understanding." It was a humiliating moment for Ava, who had spent years establishing herself as a woman of poise and substance. She could practically feel the onlookers' pity. She cast a quick glance around, noticing that even some of Jonathan's long-time associates were averting their eyes, unsure how to respond. Before Ava could summon a retort, Jonathan appeared drawn by the commotion. His gaze flickered between the two women. "Is everything okay here?" he asked, though his tone suggested he knew exactly what was unfolding. Camilla slid her arm through his with a familiarity that made Ava's stomach twist. "We're just chatting about body positivity," she said, lightly hooking Jonathan's attention. "But I'm sure you'll agree your wife has nothing to worry about. She has everything she needs, wealth, status, and the unwavering support of a loving husband." There was a tense pause, Jonathan's expression unreadable. Ava stood rigid, a swirl of emotion in her gut. She could see her reflection in the polished floor, a woman who felt both furious and helpless. In that moment, she realized that Camilla had effectively staked her claim in front of everyone. She had the audacity to mock Ava in her own home, hinting at an intimacy with Jonathan. It was Sophia who ushered Ava away, urging her to remain calm and not make a scene that the tabloids could devour. Yet as she walked off, Ava felt the eyes of the entire party upon her. She had been publicly ridiculed for her stretch marks, a painful reminder of the most cherished part of her life. Her daughter. It stung more deeply than any petty insult. Ava knew from the pitying looks around her that everyone had witnessed the cruelty. By the end of the night, the echoes of Camilla's words clung to Ava like a persistent shadow. Little did anyone realize that this moment of public shame would be Camilla's undoing, that the stage she chose to flaunt her power would soon become the scene of her downfall. When the last guests trickled out around midnight, the mansion stood eerily quiet. The post-party haze was strewn across every room, half-empty champagne glasses on tables, scattered napkins, and the lingering scent of perfume and cologne. Ava stood at the threshold of the living room. Her posture slumped. She felt emotionally drained, the tension in her shoulders almost painful. Sophia had stayed to provide moral support and was now helping gather some plates in the dining area. Jonathan was nowhere to be found. Likely Ava guessed he was off somewhere, saying his private farewells to Camilla, or smoothing over any scandalous ripples from the night. The thought made her stomach lurch with a combination of disgust and hurt. Finally, Jonathan emerged from the corridor, leading to his study. He gave Ava a once-over, as if gauging her mood, then cleared his throat. "That was quite an evening," he said, attempting a neutral tone. Ava eyed him incredulous that he could pretend it was just another party. "You let her humiliate me," she said, quietly, each word measured. "In our own home." He let out a weary sigh. "She didn't mean it like that, Ava. Camilla can be provocative." His gaze flickered away for a split second, as though he couldn't bring himself to hold her stare. Provocative, Ava repeated, bitterness leaking into her voice. "She took pleasure in mocking my stretch marks. That's not provocative, Jonathan. That's cruel." He rubbed his temple. "I don't want to argue. Tonight was important for business, and Camilla is a key contact for certain negotiations. She was out of line, but we need to handle this carefully." Anger flared within Ava. "Is it all just a business transaction to you, doll? Does the humiliation of your wife even factor into your calculations?" The memory of Camilla's snide comments and that smug look on her face ignited every nerve in Ava's body. "She's assisting me with a new foundation plan, and her network is invaluable," Jonathan began. Ava's laugh was harsh and humorless. "A new foundation, or a new fling?" Sophia, sensing the escalating confrontation, stepped out of the dining room to check on Ava. Jonathan, feeling cornered, straightened his jacket and looked at both women with annoyance. "You're misreading things as usual," he snapped, an edge in his voice. "She's an asset." Ava stiffened. "I'm your wife. What does that make me?" Before Jonathan could respond, a maid wandered in collecting leftover plates and glasses. Jonathan closed his mouth, not wanting to continue the argument in front of staff. He gave them both a curt nod and retreated to his study. Ava let out a shaky breath, her emotions swirling. Sophia wrapped an arm around her shoulders. He's lying to himself. You know that. But we'll get to the bottom of this. I don't know what to do, Ava confessed, her eyes stinging with impending tears. I feel so humiliated. She mocked me in front of everyone, and he just stood by. Sophia led Ava into the smaller sitting room, where they often had morning coffee away from prying ears. Sometimes, Sophia said gently, people like Camilla have a false sense of security. She thinks she can do whatever she wants because Jonathan's protecting her. But that kind of arrogance can lead to a downfall. Trust me, these things have a way of unraveling. The words offered some solace. Despite the heartbreak, Ava took comfort in her friend's unwavering loyalty. She nodded, letting the tears slip down her cheeks. I don't know how to protect myself anymore. All these months of rumors and now this. I can't keep pretending everything's fine. Then don't. Sophia insisted. Stop pretending. If Jonathan's not going to defend you, you need to defend yourself and your child. You have every right to stand up for your dignity. Ava looked out the window at the starry night sky, the city lights twinkling below the estate like 1,000 silent witnesses. She thought of Lena asleep upstairs in her room, blissfully unaware of her parents' strife. In that moment, Ava resolved not to let Camilla get away with what she had done. Mocking Ava's body, diminishing her role as a mother, those were lines crossed with vicious intent. If Jonathan refused to see the betrayal, Ava would take matters into her own hands. Long after Sophia left, Ava roamed the empty, dimly lit halls of the mansion, lost in thought. Yet beneath her hurt burned an emerging determination. She had been quiet too long. Tomorrow she vowed she would confront Jonathan head-on. The party might be over, but the real turning point was just beginning. Morning light filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Ava's bedroom, illuminating the plush white carpet and the elegant chaise longue near the balcony. Ava stirred, her eyes gritty from a night of restless sleep. She forced herself out of bed, the events of the previous evening tumbling through her mind. A soft knock at the door jolted her. "Mummy, can I come in?" came Lena's sweet voice. Ava sighed, realizing she had overslept. "Yes, come on in, sweetheart." Lena bounded into the room, her dark curls bouncing. She wore pastel pajamas, decorated with unicorns holding a small stuffed bunny in her arms. Ava mustered a smile. Regardless of the chaos swirling in her adult world, her daughter was a source of pure joy. "Is it true there was a big party last night?" Lena asked, wide-eyed. "I heard music when I was supposed to be sleeping." Ava stroked Lena's hair. "Yes, there was a party. Important people came to celebrate Daddy's new building." Lena frowned, scrunching her nose. "Why didn't you and Daddy tuck me in? Nanny said you were busy." A pang of guilt hit Ava. She and Jonathan had been too caught up in the spectacle and the subsequent confrontation. She gently cupped Lena's cheek. "I'm sorry, darling. Sometimes grown-ups get very busy. But I promise we'll tuck you in tonight, okay?" The little girl nodded, her eyes brightening. "Okay. Can I have chocolate pancakes for breakfast?" "Chocolate pancakes, it is." Ava agreed, pulling Lena into a quick hug. "Now go wash up, and I'll meet you in the kitchen." With Lena scampering off, Ava changed into a soft cotton robe and slippers. Her mind buzzed with the vow she made to herself last night. She would not remain silent anymore. As she headed downstairs, she overheard staff chatter in the hallway, referencing a scene that happened at the party. A hush fell when they noticed her presence, and they quickly averted their gaze. Ava stiffened, painfully aware that gossip traveled fast, especially in a household this large. In the kitchen, the chef had already prepared a spread of fresh fruit, pastries, and bacon. Ava requested chocolate pancakes, and the chef swiftly obliged, pouring a rich batter onto a sizzling griddle. Lena squealed in excitement, eager to devour her sweet treat. Jonathan entered moments later, dressed casually in a crisp polo and tailored trousers. Despite the laid-back appearance, tension etched his face. He avoided direct eye contact with Ava. "A busy day ahead," Jonathan said in a forced, light-hearted tone. He planted a quick kiss on Lena's head. "I have a meeting downtown with one of the city commissioners." Ava gave him a frosty look, but remained cordial for Lena's sake. "We need to talk," she said pointedly, refusing to let him sidestep the issue any longer. He nodded, shifting uncomfortably. "Let's discuss it in the study after breakfast." They ate mostly in silence, with Ava engaging Lena in small talk about her upcoming ballet class. Jonathan occasionally chimed in, praising Lena's progress or offering a compliment about how well she was doing in her reading skills. The facade of a pleasant family scene persisted, but Ava's heart felt like it was pounding on a battlefield. When Lena finished eating, Ava escorted her to the nanny who would drive her to ballet practice. She kissed her daughter goodbye, heart aching with love and protectiveness. Watching Lena leave the house, Ava gathered courage for the confrontation ahead. She found Jonathan already waiting in his study, pacing behind his mahogany desk. Floor-to-ceiling shelves, filled with books on business strategy and architecture, lined the walls, testaments to Jonathan's interests and intellect. But it felt more like a war room this morning, each tall shelf a silent witness to the tension between them. "We have to resolve this," Ava Jonathan began, posture stiff. "Last night things went further than I expected. I'm sorry for what Camilla said." Ava crossed her arms. "But you're not sorry you brought her, or that you've been seeing her behind my back." He paused, guilt flickering in his gaze. "Look, I told you she's important for certain deals." "Stop insulting my intelligence," Ava interjected, voice trembling with anger. "She taunted me about my body in front of everyone, and you let her. Do you realize how humiliating that was?" Jonathan sighed, rubbing his temple. "It was bad, I know. I'm going to handle it. I'll speak with Camilla and tell her she can't disrespect you like that." Ava laughed bitterly, as if the problem is simply her manner of speaking. "This is about your betrayal. The rumors have been swirling for months, Jonathan. Everyone in our social circle suspects you're having an affair with Camilla, and last night you practically confirmed it by letting her flaunt your relationship in our own home." His jaw clenched. "That is your perspective. In business, lines can get blurry. Yes, I'm closer to Camilla than I should be. But it's not." "Don't you dare gaslight me," Ava snapped. "We both know what's going on. Your indifference to my feelings, your constant travel the way you always defend her. Those are not the signs of a purely professional connection." Jonathan opened his mouth to argue, but closed it again. Silence cloaked the room, thick with unresolved tension. Finally, he exhaled. "I'll end it." Ava's breath caught. She hadn't expected him to offer that outright. "What do you mean?" He looked away, shoulders sagging. "I mean, I'll cut her off from our circle and any business dealings. I'll do it. For you and Lena." A spark of hope flickered in Ava's chest, but it was quickly tempered by skepticism. Could she trust him to follow through? Did he truly mean it, or was he just trying to smooth things over for the sake of his image? Before Ava could press further, Jonathan's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, lips tightening in frustration. "I have to take this. It's regarding the commission meeting," he said, stepping outside. Ava was left alone, the promise hanging in the air. Jonathan's words had offered a glimmer of comfort, but she couldn't shake the feeling of impending betrayal. Camilla was cunning, and if Jonathan was truly ending things, there was no telling how she would respond. Little did Ava know that Camilla's next move was already underway, and it would set the stage for the stunning reversal of fortune that would shock the entire city. Before Jonathan could end it with Camilla, the scandal reached a boiling point at dawn. News travels fast in high society, and the details of Camilla's mockery had already begun circulating among the city's elite by the time the sun rose above the Pierce estate. Sophia phoned Ava around 9 a.m., her tone urgent. "I don't know if you've heard, but word is that Camilla was bragging about how she put you in your place last night. It's vile." Ava's stomach lurched. She clenched the phone tightly. Where is she boasting about this? Apparently to anyone who would listen at the after-party. Someone told me she even said Jonathan is hers to control, not you. Sophia paused, then added softly, "I'm sorry you're going through this." Rage and betrayal flared in Ava. Jonathan's vow to end the relationship now seemed all the more necessary, and maybe too little too late. "Let me see what Jonathan says," Ava replied, voice taut. He'd better handle this. But Jonathan was nowhere to be found. He'd left early for his meeting, and his phone kept rolling to voicemail. Ava sent him several texts about the rumors, urging him to address them immediately. No reply. The silent phone on her palm was the final straw, fueling her determination to take matters into her own hands. That afternoon, a swirl of cars converged on the Pierce estate for various reasons. Staff returning leftover rentals from the party florists, retrieving vases, and a handful of business associates hoping to catch Jonathan. Among them was Camilla Harrington, who arrived in a sleek sports car, stepping out with the same unshakable poise that marked her entrance the night before. Ava's heart pounded in her chest as she saw Camilla striding up the driveway. How dare she show up unannounced? She glared from a second-story window, a sense of ownership and outrage flooding her. She decided this was her home, her territory. If Camilla thought she could waltz in and taunt her again, she was mistaken. Descending the curved staircase, Ava caught the attention of a butler hovering near the entrance. "Send Miss Harrington to the Rose Garden," she commanded in a cool tone. "I'll see her there." The Rose Garden was a place Ava cherished, a haven she had personally designed to house over 100 varieties of roses. The sweet fragrance of blooms in red, pink, and white filled the air. Despite the tranquil setting, Ava felt her blood roiling with anger. Camilla arrived moments later, her emerald eyes scanning the garden. She wore a fitted suit, her hair tied in a sleek bun. "Mrs. Pierce," she greeted with a half-smile. "I didn't expect a private meeting in your lovely garden. How romantic." Ava squared her shoulders, meeting Camilla's gaze without flinching. "Why are you here?" Camilla spread her hands. "Jonathan invited me. We have some outstanding issues related to the philanthropic foundation." "I assumed you knew." "I know exactly what your issues are," Ava shot back. "And I also know you've been bragging about humiliating me." "But guess what? This ends now." "Oh, does it?" Camilla taunted, crossing her arms. "Let's be frank, dear. Jonathan values me for more reasons than you'd like to admit. I have a skill set he finds irreplaceable. She took a step closer, her voice dropping. I understand you're angry, but do you think you can just snap your fingers and make me vanish? Ava's jaw tightened. Get one thing straight. You might think you have power over Jonathan, but you'll never be his wife. You'll never be Lena's mother. And you certainly won't ridicule me in my own home without consequences. Camilla let out a low laugh. Oh, you're feisty. That's almost admirable. She strolled around a rose bush, running a manicured finger along a dewy petal. But let me be clear. If you try to force me out, I'll make sure Jonathan regrets it. His new building, his philanthropic ventures, those are just starting points. I have enough influence to hurt him, and in turn that will hurt you. It was the final push. Ava's anger crystallized into a calm resolve. Get off my property, Camilla, she said icily. Don't ever come back. If you do, I'll have you escorted away. Camilla smirked, lifting her chin defiantly. Big talk, Mrs. Pierce. Do you really think Jonathan will side with you? He values me, and I'm not leaving until he says so. Ava held her ground. Maybe you should check your phone, she suggested, her voice thick with ominous promise. Jonathan has made his decision. Camilla glanced at her phone, skepticism flickering across her face. A single notification glowed on the screen, a message from Jonathan. As she opened it, her self-assured expression vanished. For the first time, Ava saw something akin to shock, even fear, pass over Camilla's features. She took a breath, reading the words Jonathan, in a terse but direct tone, had informed Camilla that she was no longer welcome at any Pierce property or business deal. He had made good on his promise, perhaps, under pressure from Ava, or maybe from the board of directors who feared scandal. Whatever the impetus, the result was the same. This is ridiculous, Camilla hissed, her composure slipping. Jonathan can't just cut me off. I have too much dirt on him. I can ruin him. Ruin you both. Ava advanced, her voice low. Try it. You have no idea what I'm capable of when it comes to defending my family. Camilla, momentarily at a loss, let her anger boil. She pivoted on her heels and stormed back toward the house, calling Jonathan's phone repeatedly. Each call went unanswered. The staff, silently observing from a respectful distance, parted to let her pass. There was no sympathy in their eyes. Within an hour, Camilla was escorted to the gates by security men, who had once greeted her with polite smiles, were now cool and businesslike. The property that she so confidently strode into was now off-limits. In the swirl of gossip that followed the mistress who had strutted around the Pierce estate and mocked the lady of the house, found herself abruptly on the outside. The city's rumor mill would churn out countless theories that Jonathan had fired her from a philanthropic board, that his financial support for her lavish lifestyle had ended, that she was evicted from the penthouse he'd secretly rented in her name. Regardless of the specifics, the net effect was the same. Camilla Harrington had fallen from grace, her brazen confidence shattered overnight. Ava observed the aftermath with a mix of relief and sobering realization. Though Camilla's eviction was swift, the damage to her marriage might not be so easily repaired. The question lingered. Could Ava and Jonathan rebuild what was broken, or were they living in the wreckage of a once glorious partnership? In the weeks following Camilla's eviction, a curious calm settled over the Pierce estate. The staff noted an improvement in Ava's demeanor. She no longer walked the halls with eyes clouded by suspicion. Jonathan made deliberate efforts to mend the rift in their marriage, coming home early, spending more time with Lena, and publicly praising Ava's work at her charitable foundations. Yet beneath these small gestures lay the question of whether genuine remorse had replaced convenience. Ava spent her days juggling philanthropic responsibilities reviewing new initiatives for children's welfare and re-establishing a sense of normalcy. Late at night, when Lena was tucked into bed and the rest of the estate was silent, Ava would meet Jonathan in his study or in their bedroom to talk. Their conversations were cautious, two people tiptoeing around old wounds. One evening, about a month after Camilla's departure, Jonathan and Ava found themselves seated in the drawing room, sharing a bottle of wine. The city's skyline sparkled in the distance through large bay windows. An unfinished dinner lay on the coffee table half-heartedly picked at. Jonathan cleared his throat. "Thank you for giving me another chance." His voice carried an edge of vulnerability. Ava sipped her wine, contemplating her words. "I'm not sure it's about giving you another chance yet, Jonathan. We still have to figure out what went wrong, and if we want the same future." He exhaled slowly, nodding. "I was selfish. I got lost in my ambitions and my ego. Camilla was a distraction. But also she flattered me, made me feel invincible. There's no excuse for it." Silence hovered for a moment. Ava thought about her stretch marks, the scars that Camilla weaponized to humiliate her. She looked at Jonathan with quiet intensity. "I need to know why you didn't defend me. That night when she insulted me in front of everyone, you barely said a word." He closed his eyes, a flash of regret coursing over his features. "Because at that moment, I was thinking about the business deals tied to her involvement, not about my wife's dignity. That was wrong, and I've come to realize that no amount of money or success should trump respect for you, especially in front of others." Ava listened, searching for sincerity in his tone. She found it, or at least a semblance of it. "It's going to take time," she warned, voice firm. "Trust isn't restored overnight. I won't let you or anyone else treat me like a disposable figure in your life again." He nodded, swallowing hard. "I understand. I can't lose you. I won't let it happen again." They sat in uneasy companionship, the glow of the city lights reflecting off the polished floor. For the first time, Ava felt a glimmer of real promise. The storm was finally passing, though the damage it caused would leave scars as permanent as the ones on her skin. Yet scars were a testament to survival, and survive she would. Over the following days, rumors of Camilla's downfall continued to spread. She was seen vacating the penthouse Jonathan had secretly leased for her, forced to return to a modest apartment. Her name vanished from the guest lists of exclusive galas. Some claimed she was blacklisted. Every mention of her conjured images of that humiliating night when she dared to mock Ava and was swiftly dethroned. Ava, however, tried not to revel in schadenfreude. Part of her felt pity for Camilla, recognizing the desperation that had fueled her arrogance. If anything, the experience highlighted how fragile a life built on illusions could be. Meanwhile, Ava returned to the tasks that once gave her true fulfillment. She expanded her philanthropic network, establishing a new scholarship program for single mothers who, like her, bore the physical and emotional marks of motherhood. Newspapers covered her efforts with admiration, praising her resilience and courage. One sunny afternoon, Ava stood in the nursery garden behind the estate, watching Lena chase after butterflies. The child's laughter filled the air, a healing sound that washed over Ava's soul. She touched her abdomen lightly, feeling the ridges of her stretch marks through her dress. Instead of shame, she felt gratitude. These marks were proof of the life she brought into the world, a love that was unconditional and pure. Jonathan joined them, stooping to pick a flower for Lena. For a brief instant, the three of them existed in a peaceful tableau. They were not the perfect family by any means, but they were trying. And perhaps in that sincere effort, a new beginning was emerging. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, Ava realized that no matter how many storms raged in her life, she would endure. She had discovered a well of strength once hidden, now blazing within her. Whether her marriage to Jonathan fully healed or not, she had reclaimed her sense of worth. No one, least of all a petty mistress, could ever take that away again. The tale of a brazen mistress mocking a wife's stretch marks in front of the city's elite, only to be expelled in the harsh light of morning, proves that arrogance can topple even the loftiest illusions. Ava learned that true strength isn't about appearing flawless. It's about embracing every scar as a testament of resilience. Jonathan, for his part, discovered that loyalty and respect can't be measured in balance sheets and board meetings. The whisper of silk, the glint of a diamond, the sweet scent of impending fatherhood. Amelia had orchestrated the perfect surprise. A gift not just of luxury, but of love sent to her husband's gleaming corporate office. It was a testament to their shared future, a future she carried gently within her. But in the sterile air of that high-rise, another woman's hands adorned with rings he'd also bought would tear open the carefully wrapped package. The scream that followed wasn't one of delight. It was a sound that would shatter the pristine facade of their perfect life, exposing a web of deceit so intricate that the truth would be the most devastating blow of all. Amelia traced the rim of her porcelain teacup, the delicate floral pattern a stark contrast to the storm brewing within her. From the 35th floor of their penthouse apartment, the city sprawled beneath her like a glittering tapestry, a world she and Julian had conquered together. Or rather, a world Julian had conquered and she had graciously adorned. Her reflection in the panoramic window showed a woman who had everything a husband whose name echoed in the halls of finance, a home that graced the covers of architectural magazines, and a baby, their baby, nestled safely in her womb. She was 6 months along the gentle swell of her stomach, a constant, wondrous reminder of the new life she was nurturing. This pregnancy, a hard-won miracle after years of quiet heartbreak, had cemented what she believed to be an unbreakable bond with Julian. He had been ecstatic, his usual cool demeanor melting away to reveal a man of surprising tenderness. He'd ordered a custom-built crib from a bespoke furniture maker in Italy, filled a room with every conceivable baby gadget, and massaged her swollen ankles every night with a devotion that brought tears to her eyes. Julian was a man of grand gestures. Their life was a testament to it. Their wedding had been a week-long affair on the Amalfi Coast. Her birthdays were marked by surprise trips to Paris or the acquisition of a rare piece of art. He'd once bought out an entire Michelin-starred restaurant for a private dinner, simply because she'd mentioned a craving for their truffle pasta. He called her his queen, his everything. And Amelia, swept away by the sheer force of his affection and the dazzling world he provided, had believed it. Every single word. Today was the anniversary of the day they'd first met. A detail she was sure Julian, in his whirlwind of meetings and multi-million-dollar deals, had forgotten. But Amelia hadn't. She cherished these small, intimate milestones. They were the invisible threads that wove their grand love story together. To commemorate it, she had planned a surprise that was both deeply personal and a nod to the life he so meticulously curated. She had commissioned a one-of-a-kind timepiece, a Patek Philippe Calatrava, with a secret inscription on the back. It wasn't a flamboyant, diamond-encrusted model. It was classic, elegant, timeless. Everything she felt their love was. The inscription was a line from a poem they'd both loved in college, a poignant reminder of their humbler beginnings before the towering skyscrapers and private jets. My soul, your soul, 2 stars in the same sky. But the watch was only part of the gift. Tucked inside the luxurious lacquered box was a small silver-plated frame. Inside it wasn't a photo of them, but the first sonogram picture of their baby, the tiny, grainy image that had made Julian weep with joy. And beside it, a handwritten note on her thick, cream-colored stationery. My dearest Julian, remember the starry nights on that rusty fire escape, dreaming of a future we could barely imagine today on the anniversary of our first hello. I wanted to give you something to remind you that even in our dazzling sky, some stars shine just for us. This little one is our newest star. I love you more than words can say. Happy anniversary. Forever yours, Amelia. She smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile that reached her eyes. It was perfect. She had arranged for a premium courier service, the kind that handled priceless art and sensitive tournaments, to deliver it to his office at precisely 3 p.m. She imagined his surprise, his colleagues catching a glimpse of the devoted family man behind the ruthless CEO. She pictured him calling her, his voice thick with emotion, thanking her for remembering, for loving him so completely. The courier, a man in a crisp uniform, arrived exactly on time. He handled the elegantly wrapped package with the reverence it deserved. Amelia gave him the address. Sterling Whitcroft Holdings, 48th floor, 1 Vanderbilt, Manhattan. The name of the building itself was a symbol of power and prestige, a fitting stage for her grand romantic gesture. Please ensure this is handed directly to Mr. Julian Croft, she instructed, pressing a generous tip into the courier's hand. It's of immense personal value. Of course, Mrs. Croft. It will be delivered with the utmost care. As the door clicked shut, a wave of contentment washed over her. She settled onto the plush velvet sofa, picking up a book on motherhood. The afternoon sun streamed in, casting a warm glow on the pages. For the next hour, she was lost in a world of feeding schedules and developmental milestones, her heart full of a quiet, unshakable joy. She was Amelia Croft, the cherished wife of a brilliant man, soon to be the mother of his child. Her world was perfect, secure, and shimmering with love. The scream that would tear it all apart was still hours away, an impossible sound in a life so meticulously soundproofed from reality. Julian's office was an extension of his personality, sleek, modern, and intimidating. Glass walls offered a panoramic view of the city, but the real power was inside the room. A massive mahogany desk, an array of monitors displaying fluctuating market data, and a collection of abstract art that was both expensive and emotionally distant. It was a space designed to communicate dominance. His executive assistant, a woman in her late 50s, with a stern but efficient demeanor, guarded the entrance to this inner sanctum like a hawk. She vetted his calls, managed his impossible schedule, and could spot a sycophant from a mile away. Her name was Margaret, and she was fiercely loyal to Julian. She was also, Amelia knew, fond of her. Margaret often commented on how Amelia was a calming influence on her demanding boss. When the courier arrived at the 48th floor, it was Margaret he met. A package for Mr. Julian Croft, the courier announced, presenting the beautifully wrapped box. Personal delivery. Margaret's eyebrows rose slightly. It wasn't unusual for gifts to arrive, but this had a different feel. It was elegant, personal, not the usual ostentatious corporate gift basket. She recognized the expensive wrapping paper, the same kind Amelia had used for Julian's last birthday gift. A small, knowing smile touched her lips. "Thank you. I'll see that he gets it," she said, signing the electronic pad. She carried the gift towards Julian's office, her heels clicking softly on the polished marble floor. The glass door was slightly ajar, and she could hear voices from within. Julian's deep, confident tone and a lighter, feminine laugh that was decidedly not Amelia's. Margaret paused. This was the delicate part of her job, the part she hated, the part where she had to navigate the other side of Julian Croft's life, the side that Amelia in her gilded cage knew nothing about. The laugh belonged to Cassandra. Cassandra was a senior analyst in the mergers and acquisitions department. She was whip-smart, ambitious, and stunningly beautiful in a way that was the polar opposite of Amelia's classic elegance. Where Amelia was soft curves and gentle smiles, Cassandra was sharp angles and a predatory gaze. She had raven black hair, cut in a severe, stylish bob, and a wardrobe of form-fitting dresses that were just on the edge of office-appropriate. She was a shark in a sea of sharks, and she had set her sights on Julian Croft from the day she'd walked into the firm. Margaret had seen it all unfold. The late-night strategy sessions, the business trips that coincidentally involved a layover in a romantic city, the lingering touches and shared glances that crackled with an energy that had nothing to do with stock prices. She despised Cassandra, not just for the blatant affair, but for the danger she posed to the kind, unsuspecting woman who was carrying Julian's child. She could hear their conversation more clearly now. "The deal is sealed. We'll announce the acquisition on Monday," Julian was saying. "We should celebrate." Cassandra purred, her voice dripping with suggestion. "My place tonight. I'll open that bottle of single malt you like." "I can't tonight, Cass. Amelia is—" He trailed off, but Margaret could fill in the blank. "Amelia is pregnant. Amelia is waiting for me at home." "Right." The little wifey Cassandra's tone was laced with a derision she barely tried to conceal. "How is she, by the way? Still enjoying her life as a professional lunch-goer?" Margaret's hand tightened on the package. The insult to Amelia was a physical blow. She despised this woman's cruelty. "Be nice." Julian's voice was firm, but it lacked real conviction. He never defended Amelia with the ferocity he used to defend a business deal. "I'm just saying," Cassandra continued, undeterred. "You're here closing the biggest deal of the year, a titan of the industry, and she's at home." "What, picking out nursery colours?" "It's a bit of a mismatch, don't you think?" Before Julian could respond, Margaret decided to make her presence known. She knocked sharply on the doorframe. "Julian. A personal delivery for you." Julian looked up, his expression shifting from one of intimate conspiracy to professional command in a split second. Cassandra, however, didn't bother to school her features. She shot Margaret a look of pure annoyance, angry at the interruption. "Bring it in." "Margaret," Julian said, gesturing towards his desk. As Margaret walked in, Cassandra's eyes landed on the gift. Her expression changed from annoyance to a covetous curiosity. It was clearly expensive, clearly personal, and in Cassandra's mind, anything personal and expensive belonging to Julian should by rights be related to her. "Ooh, what's this?" "An admirer?" she asked, stepping forward. She ran a perfectly manicured finger over the silk ribbon. "Let me guess. A gift from the board for closing the Henderson deal." "It's from my wife, Julian," said a little too quickly. He made a move to take the box, but Cassandra was faster. With a playful, possessive flick of her wrist, she snatched it from Margaret's grasp. "From Amelia." Cassandra's red lips curled into a smirk. "How sweet." "What did she get?" "Another set of monogrammed handkerchiefs." "Cassandra, give it to me." Julian's voice held a warning tone. This was a line he wasn't prepared to cross in front of his assistant. But Cassandra was fueled by arrogance and a desire to needle him, to assert her place in his life. She saw herself not as the mistress, but as his true partner, the one who understood his world of power and ambition. Amelia was just a domestic accessory. "Oh, don't be such a spoil sport." "Darling," she cooed, her voice loud enough for anyone passing in the hallway to hear. "I want to see what perfect taste your perfect wife has. Let's open it together." And with that, before Julian or Margaret could react, Cassandra's sharp, blood-red nails tore into the elegant wrapping paper. She ripped it open with a careless, almost violent motion, a stark contrast to the love and care with which Amelia had wrapped it just hours before. The lid of the Patek Philippe box was revealed. Cassandra's eyes widened with genuine surprise and a flash of greed. "Well, well, Mrs. Croft has expensive taste," she murmured, lifting the heavy lid. The classic, understated beauty of the Calatrava gleamed up at them. For a moment there was silence. Julian stared, a muscle twitching in his jaw. Margaret held her breath, a sense of dread coiling in her stomach. And then Cassandra saw what was nestled beside the watch. She picked up the small silver frame. She tilted it towards the light. Her brow furrowed in confusion. And then she saw it, the grainy black and white image. The unmistakable shape of a fetus, her face a mask of triumphant arrogance, just seconds before contorted. The color drained from her cheeks, her crimson lips parted. And then she screamed. It wasn't a scream of surprise or delight. It was a raw, guttural sound of pure, unadulterated shock and horror. A sound of a carefully constructed reality, shattering into a million pieces. A sound that echoed through the glass-walled office, out into the hushed professional quiet of the 48th floor. A primal cry of a secret blown wide open. The scream ripped through the sterile air of the 48th floor, sharp and visceral. It was a sound that didn't belong amidst the quiet hum of servers and the muted ringing of phones. Heads popped up over cubicle walls. The low murmur of business chatter ceased. In that one piercing moment, every eye on the floor was turned towards the glass-walled office of Julian Croft. Inside the scene was frozen. Julian stood, his face a ghastly shade of pale, his eyes wide with a mixture of fury and panic. Margaret was rooted to the spot, her professional composure finally cracking as she stared at the unfolding disaster, and Cassandra was trembling. Her hand clapped over her mouth, as if to shove the scream back down her throat. Her other hand still held the silver frame, but her knuckles were white, her grip so tight it threatened to crush the delicate object. What is this?" she finally whispered, her voice a ragged, broken thing. She thrust the sonogram picture towards Julian, her eyes wild and accusing. "What is this? Julian!" Julian finally jolted into action, lunged forward and snatched the frame from her hand. He grabbed the watchbox, shoving the picture and the handwritten note back inside with clumsy, frantic movements. "Get out!" he hissed at Cassandra, his voice low and venomous. "Get out now!" But Cassandra wasn't listening. Her gaze was locked on his face, searching for an answer, a denial, anything. You told me you were leaving her. You said the marriage was just for appearances, a business arrangement." Her voice began to rise again, teetering on the edge of hysteria. "You don't have a baby with a business arrangement, Julian." I said. "Get out!" he roared, his voice finally exploding, echoing his earlier command. but now filled with raw, desperate anger. He grabbed her arm, his fingers digging into her flesh, and began to physically propel her towards the door. "Let go of me," she shrieked, struggling against his grip. "You lied to me. All this time you've been lying to me." The spectacle was now on full display for the entire senior management floor. Colleagues, rivals, and subordinates alike were staring their faces a mixture of shock, fascination, and thinly veiled schadenfreude. The pristine facade of Julian Croft, the untouchable master of the universe, was cracking right before their eyes. Margaret, her training kicking in, moved swiftly to the door. "Everything is fine," she announced in a firm, commanding voice to the gawking crowd. "Mr. Croft is handling a private matter. Please return to your work." She pulled the door shut, the click of the latch sounding like a gunshot in the charged silence. She then turned back to the chaos within. Julian had managed to shove Cassandra out of his office, slamming the door behind her. He leaned against it, his chest heaving, his tie askew. He ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, messing it up for the first time Margaret had ever seen. He looked cornered, trapped. Through the glass wall they could see Cassandra stumbling back to her own desk, a trail of stunned and whispering colleagues in her wake. She collapsed into her chair, her face buried in her hands, her shoulders shaking with violent sobs. The damage was done. The secret was out. The carefully compartmentalized worlds of Julian Croft had just collided with the force of a nuclear explosion. Julian turned his eyes, finally landing on Margaret. His expression was one of pure fury, but it was the desperate fury of a man who has lost control. Not a word of this to anyone, Margaret, he seethed, especially not to Amelia. "Do you understand me?" Margaret met his gaze, her own expression unreadable. For years, she had been his loyal soldier, his gatekeeper, the silent facilitator of his double life. She had rationalized it as part of the job, a necessary evil in the high-stakes world they inhabited. But the sound of Cassandra's scream, the sight of that tiny sonogram picture, had shifted something within her. It was no longer an abstract indiscretion. It was a betrayal of a woman she respected, a woman who was blissfully awaiting the birth of her child. "She is going to call Julian." "Margaret," said her voice, steady and cool. "She is expecting you to thank her for your gift. What are you going to say?" The question hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Julian stared at the Patek Philippe box on his desk as if it were a venomous snake. The gift, meant to be a symbol of love and shared history, had become an instrument of his exposure. Amelia's perfect, heartfelt gesture had backfired in the most spectacular way imaginable. He snatched the box, opened it, and pulled out the handwritten note. He read Amelia's loving words, her reference to their shared past, her excitement for their future. His face, already pale, seemed to lose another shade of color. The sincerity of her love, the purity of her intentions, was a searing indictment of his own duplicity. "I'll handle it," he muttered, shoving the note into his pocket. He picked up his phone, his thumb hovering over Amelia's contact photo, a picture of her smiling, radiant on a beach in the Maldives. He looked like a man about to walk to his own execution. Meanwhile, back in her sun-drenched penthouse, Amelia was beginning to feel the first stirrings of unease. It was now well past 4 p.m. She had expected a call from Julian almost immediately. He was usually so prompt, so effusive in his gratitude for her gifts. She pictured the scene in his office again, But this time a small, unwelcome detail crept in the press of his schedule, an important meeting he couldn't leave, a sudden market crisis demanding his attention. She reassured herself. He was a busy man. That was part of the package. He would call when he could. She tried to go back to her book, but the words blurred on the page. She checked her phone. No missed calls. No messages. She decided to call him. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Then it went to voicemail. "You've reached Julian Croft. I'm unavailable at the moment. Please leave a message." This was unusual. Julian prided himself on his accessibility, at least to her. His phone was an extension of his hand. For him not to answer was strange. For him not to have called her by now was almost unheard of. A tiny seed of anxiety began to sprout in the fertile ground of her waiting. She told herself she was being silly, that the pregnancy hormones were making her oversensitive. She made herself another cup of herbal tea, the steam warming her hands, but not the chill that was beginning to creep into her heart. Back on the 48th floor, Julian was staring at his phone, watching Amelia's call go to voicemail. He couldn't talk to her. Not now. Not when the sound of Cassandra's scream was still ringing in his ears. What would he say? How could he possibly feign the delight and emotion she would be expecting? His voice would betray him. His guilt was a physical thing, a sour taste in his mouth. He looked at the gift box. He had to hide it. He couldn't take it home. Amelia would expect to see him wearing the watch. She would ask where he had put the picture frame. The entire gift was now radioactive, a piece of evidence in a crime he was desperate to conceal. He looked at Margaret, his eyes pleading. "I need you to... To what, Julian?" She cut him off, her tone sharp. "To lie for you, to clean up this mess. My job is to manage your schedule, not your infidelities." The insubordination was shocking, and they both knew it. But Margaret had reached her limit. Julian's face hardened. "You will do what I tell you to do, Margaret. Your loyalty is to me and to this company. Your very generous salary depends on it." The threat hung in the air, ugly and undisguised. Margaret stared back at him, a silent battle of wills playing out between them. Finally, with a sigh that seemed to carry the weight of years of complicity, she nodded. "What do you need me to do?" she asked, her voice flat and devoid of its usual warmth. "Take this," he said, pushing the Patek Philippe box towards her. "Get it out of here. I don't care what you do with it. Sell it. Throw it in the Hudson River. Just make sure it disappears. And it never ever gets back to my wife." He then turned his attention to the more immediate problem, Cassandra. He strode out of his office, ignoring the renewed whispers and stares, and marched directly to her desk. "My office." "Now," he commanded. Cassandra, her face tear-streaked and blotchy, looked up at him with a mixture of hatred and heartbreak. She followed him back to his office, and he shut the door firmly behind them. "You have 5 minutes to pack your personal belongings," he said, his voice cold and devoid of any emotion. "Security will escort you from the building. Your severance package will be generous. But it is contingent on you signing a non-disclosure agreement, so comprehensive it will prevent you from even thinking my name." "Is that clear?" Cassandra stared at him aghast. "You're firing me." Her voice was a choked whisper. "After everything. After all your promises." "The promises were based on a discretion you have just proven incapable of," Julian retorted icily. "You created a scene. You disrupted the entire floor. You are a liability. The situation is over. You are over." The cruelty was breathtaking. The man who had whispered promises of a future together was now discarding her like a failed business venture. Cassandra's heartbreak curdled into a cold, hard rage. "You think you can just get rid of me," she hissed. "You think you can silence me with money? You have no idea who you're messing with, Julian. I know everything. I know about the offshore accounts. I know about the Cayman deal. I know where all the bodies are buried. You may have fired me from your company, but you are not rid of me." She turned and walked out of his office, her head held high, leaving a stunned Julian in her wake. He had solved one problem by firing her, but he had just created a much, much bigger one. He had underestimated Cassandra's fury, and he had no idea just how far she would go to get her revenge. And miles away in the quiet luxury of her penthouse, Amelia looked at the clock. It was almost 5 p.m. The silence from her husband was no longer just strange. It was a screaming, gaping void that was starting to swallow her perfect world whole. She picked up her phone and dialed a different number. It was a number she rarely used, but one she knew by heart. It was Margaret's direct line at the office. "Margaret." "It's Amelia Croft," she said, trying to keep her voice light and casual. "I'm so sorry to bother you, but I've been trying to reach Julian. Is he in a meeting? I sent a package over earlier, and I just wanted to make sure he received it." On the other end of the line, Margaret closed her eyes. She held the heavy Patek Philippe box in her lap. The lie Julian wanted her to tell felt like poison on her tongue. But the threat to her livelihood, the years of ingrained loyalty, and a flicker of misguided pity for the man whose life was imploding, made her hesitate. "Yes, Mrs. Croft." Margaret began, her voice carefully neutral. "He's just been pulled into an emergency conference call with the London office. The market is very volatile today. He did ask me to tell you that he received your gift and he loves it. He said he would call you the second he is free." The lie was delivered, the first of many, and as Amelia hung up, a wave of relief washed over her, chasing away the earlier anxiety. Of course, a market crisis. It all made sense. She was being silly oversensitive. Her Julian was just busy conquering the world. He loved her gift. Everything was fine. But Margaret, as she placed the phone back in its cradle, felt a profound sense of shame. She looked at the expensive box in her lap, the symbol of a pure love that had been so cruelly desecrated. She thought of the furious, vengeful woman who had just been fired and the kind, pregnant woman who had just been lied to. And she knew with a certainty that chilled her to the bone that this was far from over. This was just the beginning. The days that followed were a masterclass in deception. Julian returned home that evening, the very picture of the doting husband. He came bearing a bouquet of Amelia's favorite peonies and a story expertly crafted of a frantic day-long crisis involving a sudden currency devaluation that had threatened a major European acquisition. "I'm so sorry, my love," he said, enveloping her in a hug. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, his lips carefully avoiding hers. "I was chained to my desk all day. Margaret told you I got your gift." Amelia melted into his embrace, her earlier anxieties seeming foolish and distant. "She did. I'm just glad everything is okay." "Did you like it?" she asked, her eyes searching his for the emotional response she had been anticipating all day. Julian's performance was flawless. He smiled a warm, crinkling smile that almost reached his eyes. "Liked it, Amelia." I was speechless. "It's magnificent. The Calatrava, it's a work of art. And the inscription, it took me right back to that fire escape." He paused, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "But the picture, That was the real gift. I almost lost it right there in front of the entire board. It was exactly what she had wanted to hear. The perfect reaction. Yet a tiny, almost imperceptible detail felt off. He spoke the words with practiced ease, but the genuine, soul-shaking emotion she had expected to see in his eyes wasn't quite there. It was like watching a brilliant actor play a part rather than witnessing a true, heartfelt reaction. But she dismissed the feeling as quickly as it came. He was tired. It had been a long, stressful day. "Where is it?" she asked, a playful smile on her face. "I expected you to come home wearing it." Julian didn't miss a beat. "Are you crazy?" A Patek Philippe. That beautiful. I took one look at it and locked it straight in the office safe. It's far too valuable to be worn every day, and especially not on a day as chaotic as today. I'd be terrified of scratching it. We'll take it out for our anniversary dinner on Saturday. It was a plausible, even sensible explanation. It was so Julian, protective of beautiful, expensive things. And so Amelia accepted it. She accepted his excuses, his carefully constructed narrative, the slight distance in his kiss. She wanted to believe him. Her entire world, the very foundation of her happiness, depended on it. Life returned to its glossy, perfect rhythm. Julian went to the office, Amelia attended her prenatal yoga classes, and oversaw the final touches on the nursery. They talked about baby names, debated the merits of different strollers, and planned a baby moon in the Seychelles. Julian was attentive, charming, and affectionate, but Amelia couldn't shake a subtle, persistent feeling of unease. It was in the small things. He started keeping his phone face down on the nightstand, something he'd never done before. He was more jumpy, a sudden noise making him flinch. He claimed it was the residual stress from the market crisis, but there was a furtive, hunted look in his eyes that she'd never seen before. He also began to work later, claiming the European acquisition required late-night calls and endless paperwork. He would come home long after she had gone to bed, slipping under the covers, with the cool silence of a ghost. A week after the incident, Amelia had a doctor's appointment. It was a routine checkup, and she'd asked Julian to come with her, hoping they could hear the baby's heartbeat together again. He had agreed enthusiastically, but on the morning of the appointment, he called, his voice strained. "Darling, I'm so sorry. I'm completely swamped. We're in the final stages of due diligence on the Henderson deal. I can't possibly get away." "The Henderson deal?" Amelia asked, confused. "I thought that was the deal that closed last week, the one that caused the big crisis." There was a fractional pause on the other end of the line. No. That was the precursor. This is the final, painstaking legal work. It's incredibly tedious. I promise I'll be at the next one. Get me a new picture of our little star. Okay. She hung up, a knot of disappointment tightening in her chest. She went to the appointment alone, sitting in the waiting room, surrounded by beaming couples. She listened to the strong, rhythmic thump of her baby's heart, a sound of profound joy that was now tinged with a lonely sadness. That afternoon, needing a distraction, she decided to do some shopping. As she browsed in a high-end baby boutique, her phone buzzed. It was an email notification. The subject line was blank. The sender was an address she didn't recognize, Karma. RSA bitch at protonmail.com. Curiosity piqued, she opened it. There was no text, just a single attachment, a video file. Hesitantly, she tapped to download it. It was short, only about 15 seconds long, and the quality was grainy, clearly filmed on a phone from a distance. The video showed a man and a woman standing outside a sleek, modern apartment building at night. They were arguing. The man was Julian. The woman was beautiful with striking dark hair and a furious expression. Amelia's heart began to pound in her chest. She recognized the woman. She had seen her once or twice at company functions. Cassandra, an analyst from his firm. The audio was faint, but Amelia turned the volume all the way up, pressing the phone to her ear. "Can't just throw me away." Cassandra's voice was high and shrill. "The deal is done, Cassandra. It's over." Julian's voice was cold, dismissive. "Is it? Or are you just scared? Scared your perfect little wife will find out. Her perfect little life is a complete and utter lie." The video ended. Amelia stood frozen in the middle of the baby boutique, surrounded by soft pastels and cheerful animal motifs. The air left her lungs. A cold, terrifying dread, far worse than any anxiety she had felt before, washed over her. A lie. Her perfect life is a complete and utter lie. Her hands shaking, she stumbled out of the store, nearly colliding with another shopper. She hailed a taxi, her mind racing, trying to make sense of what she had just seen. An argument. It could be work-related. Cassandra had just been fired. Julian had told her for poor performance and a bad attitude. Maybe this was just the fallout from that. But Cassandra's words. "Scared your perfect little wife will find out." The words echoed in her head, a venomous chorus. No, it wasn't possible. Julian loved her. He was the father of her child. They were building a life together. This woman, this Cassandra, was just a bitter, disgruntled ex-employee trying to cause trouble. That had to be it. But the seed of doubt once planted had taken root, and it was growing its thorny vines wrapping around her heart. When she got home, the penthouse felt different. It was no longer a sanctuary. It felt like a stage, a beautifully decorated set for a play in which she was the unknowing lead. She walked into Julian's home office, a space she rarely entered. It was as immaculate as ever. She ran her hand over his desk, her eyes scanning for, she didn't even know what. Her gaze fell upon his briefcase, which he had left by his chair. On a sudden, uncharacteristic impulse, she opened it. Inside were files, a laptop, a leather-bound notebook. She picked up the notebook. His handwriting, a sharp, decisive script, filled the pages. It was mostly meeting notes, market analysis numbers. And then she saw it. Tucked into a side pocket of the notebook was a receipt. A jewelry receipt dated 2 months ago. It was from Cartier. The item purchased a Trinity ring. Amelia's breath caught. The Trinity ring. 3 interlocking bands of gold, a symbol of love, fidelity, and friendship. It was a beautiful, romantic piece, and Julian had not given it to her. Her mind flashed back to the video, to Cassandra's hands gesturing angrily. She remembered seeing the glint of gold on her finger. 3 interlocking bands. The blood drained from Amelia's face. She sank into Julian's leather office chair, the receipt trembling in her hand. This wasn't a disgruntled employee. This was his mistress. The late nights, the business trips, the sudden distance. It all clicked into place with sickening clarity. The lie wasn't just in the video. The lie was her entire life. And then a worse thought, a thought so monstrous it made her feel physically ill. The gift. The Patek Philippe. The sonogram. The story about the office safe suddenly seemed laughably thin. The praise for the gift felt hollow, rehearsed. Why had he really hidden it? What had really happened that day? The pieces began to form a horrifying mosaic in her mind. The scream that Cassandra had let out in the video. It was a scream of shock. What if she hadn't been screaming at Julian in the street? What if she had screamed in his office? Amelia's mind raced back to the day she sent the gift. Her call to Margaret. Margaret's smooth, reassuring lie. He's in a conference call. He loves the gift. Margaret. Margaret would know. She was Julian's gatekeeper. She saw everything, heard everything. And despite her professional demeanor, Amelia had always felt a current of warmth from the older woman, a hint of sympathy. With a resolve she didn't know she possessed. Amelia stood up. The hurt, the betrayal. It was a physical weight threatening to crush her. But beneath it, something else was stirring. A cold, hard anger. She had been played for a fool. Her love, her pregnancy, her most sacred feelings had been used as props in his sordid drama. She would not be a victim. She would find out the truth. The whole truth. She picked up her phone and dialed Margaret's number again. This time there would be no polite inquiries. This time there would be no accepting easy lies. "Margaret," she said, when the assistant answered her voice dangerously quiet. "We need to talk. Not on the phone. In person. I'm coming to the office, now." Before Margaret could protest, Amelia hung up. She walked into her bedroom, her movements stiff and robotic. She looked at her reflection in the mirror. The soft, happy woman from a week ago was gone. In her place was a woman with haunted eyes and a grim, determined set to her mouth. She was a queen, just as Julian had always said, but a queen whose kingdom had been revealed to be built on lies, and she was about to go to war. The taxi ride to 1 Vanderbilt was a blur. The familiar Manhattan cityscape, once a symbol of her and Julian's shared success, now seemed hostile and alien. Every gleaming skyscraper felt like a monument to a lie. Amelia sat ramrod straight, her hands clasped tightly over her baby bump, a protective primal gesture. The naive, trusting woman, who had so lovingly sent a gift to her husband, was gone, incinerated in the fire of his betrayal. In her place was a woman, forged in cold fury, her mind whirring with a chilling clarity. She didn't go to the main entrance. She knew the protocol, the way visitors were announced, the chance that Julian would be alerted to her presence. Instead, she remembered a private entrance on the side street that led to a discreet elevator bank sold by the top executives. Margaret had pointed it out to her once. It was a small detail, a piece of insider knowledge, and she would use it. She was done playing by the rules of a game that had been rigged against her from the start. When she stepped out onto the 48th floor, the atmosphere was thick with a tension she could now finally understand. The whispers she might have once dismissed as office gossip now sounded like echoes of her own humiliation. She saw the sideways glances, the sudden silences as she walked past. They knew. They had all known. They had watched the drama unfold while she sat in her penthouse, blissfully ignorant. She walked directly to Margaret's desk, her gaze unwavering. The older woman looked up, her face pale. She saw the look in Amelia's eyes, and her professional mask crumbled. What she saw was not the gentle Mrs. Croft, but a woman on the verge of shattering, held together only by sheer force of will. "Mrs. Croft. Amelia, you shouldn't be here," Margaret stammered, standing up. "Don't, Amelia," said her voice low and steady, cutting through Margaret's flustered greeting. "Don't you dare lie to me again. Margaret, I know. I know about Cassandra. I know about the affair." Margaret's face fell. The years of carefully maintained composure dissolved into undisguised pity and regret. How she whispered. "That doesn't matter," Amelia said, her voice sharp. "What matters is what happened here last week. The day I sent the gift, I want you to tell me everything, every single detail. And if you value your conscience, you will not leave a single thing out." Julian was in a meeting in the main boardroom, a glass-walled enclosure in the center of the floor. He was visible to them, pacing, gesturing, commanding the room, completely unaware of the reckoning that was taking place just 50 feet away. Margaret hesitated, her eyes darting nervously towards Julian's office. Her loyalty, her job, her entire life was tied to that man. But then she looked back at Amelia. She saw the profound pain in her eyes, the slight tremble of her hands resting on her pregnant stomach. She thought of the beautiful, heartfelt gift and the ugly, violent way it had been desecrated. The lie she had told Amelia over the phone had been eating at her for a week. The guilt was a heavy, indigestible stone in her gut. "He made me get rid of it," Margaret said, her voice barely a whisper. Amelia's blood ran cold. "Get rid of what?" "The gift. The watch. The picture of your baby." Margaret's eyes filled with tears. Cassandra was in his office when it arrived. She thought it was for her. She opened it, and she saw the sonogram. She screamed. The whole floor heard it. It was a disaster. The scene played out in Amelia's mind, a horrifying, vivid nightmare. The woman who was sleeping with her husband, her hands on the picture of their unborn child. The scream, the humiliation. It was infinitely worse than anything she could have imagined. And Julian. Amelia pressed her voice devoid of emotion. "What did he do?" "He fired her. Right on the spot. Then he gave me the box and told me to make it disappear. He was terrified you would find out." "Where is it now?" Amelia's question was like a shard of ice. Margaret swallowed hard. She reached down into the bottom drawer of her filing cabinet, a drawer she had kept locked all week. She pulled out the Patek Philippe box and placed it on the desk between them. Amelia stared at it. The elegant wrapping paper was gone, replaced by the stark lacquered wood. It looked like a tiny coffin. With trembling fingers, she opened the lid. The magnificent watch was there, gleaming cold and unused. Beside it, tucked away, was the silver frame with the sonogram and her handwritten note. She picked up the note. "My soul, your soul. 2 stars in the same sky." The words, once a declaration of transcendent love, were now a bitter, mocking epitaph. A tear, hot and heavy, finally escaped her and splashed onto the expensive cream stationery, blurring the ink. She wiped the tear away with an angry gesture. This was not the time for weeping. This was the time for action. "Thank you, Margaret," she said, her voice regaining its strength. She closed the box. "You've done the right thing." She looked over at the glass boardroom. Julian's meeting was wrapping up. People were starting to stand, shaking hands. He would be out in minutes. Margaret Amelia said, a new chilling plan forming in her mind. "Does this company have a town hall meeting scheduled any time soon?" An all-hands meeting for the entire New York office. Margaret looked confused. "Yes, there's one this Friday. Julian is the keynote speaker. It's a big quarterly address." "Perfect," Amelia said. She gave Margaret a look of such intense, cold resolve that the older woman physically recoiled. "I want you to do one more thing for me. And this time, it's not for Julian. It's for me. And for every woman who has ever been made to feel like a fool." 2 days later on Friday, The auditorium at Sterling Whitcroft Holdings was packed. Hundreds of employees, from fresh-faced interns to seasoned senior partners, filled the tiered seats. There was a buzz of anticipation in the air. The quarterly town hall was a major event, a chance to hear directly from the CEO. But today, the anticipation was laced with something else: gossip. The story of Cassandra's dramatic screaming exit and swift dismissal had spread like wildfire. Everyone knew something had happened, but the details were murky speculative. Julian Croft stood at the podium on the brightly lit stage, looking every inch the powerful, confident leader. He was dressed in a bespoke suit, his voice resonant and assured as he spoke about quarterly earnings, market projections, and the company's bright future. He was in his element, the master of his universe. The chaos of the previous week firmly behind him. He had dealt with Cassandra. He had placated Amelia. The storm had passed. He was just moving into his closing remarks, a rallying cry about integrity and teamwork, when the main doors at the back of the auditorium swung open. A figure was silhouetted in the doorway. It was a woman. As she walked down the central aisle, a stunned silence fell over the room. Murmurs rippled through the crowd as people recognized her. It was Amelia Croft. She looked radiant, ethereal. She was wearing a simple but elegant white dress that accentuated her pregnancy. Her hair was styled perfectly, her makeup flawless. She looked like an angel, an avenging angel. Julian stopped mid-sentence, his words dying in his throat. His face went ashen. He stared at her, his confident posture collapsing, a look of pure, unadulterated terror in his eyes. He knew in that instant that his world was about to end. Amelia didn't look at him. She walked calmly and deliberately towards the stage, her heels clicking with a steady, resolute rhythm on the floor. In her hands, she carried the Patek Philippe box. As she reached the short set of stairs leading to the stage, a few security guards started to move towards her, unsure of how to react. But Amelia simply gave them a serene, dismissive glance, and they stopped confused. She walked onto the stage and approached the podium, stopping directly in front of her husband. She could feel the collective gaze of hundreds of people on her, could hear the frantic whispering. She ignored it all. Her focus was entirely on Julian. She leaned into the microphone, her voice calm and clear, amplified throughout the cavernous room. "My husband," she began, her voice ringing with a strength no one in that room had ever heard from her, "is a man who speaks about integrity, about loyalty, about the values that make this company great." She paused, letting the words hang in the air. Julian was frozen, paralyzed, a statue of a guilty man. "He is also a man of grand gestures," she continued, her voice gaining an edge. "And recently, to celebrate a personal milestone, the anniversary of the day we met, I decided to make a grand gesture of my own." She held up the lacquered box for the entire auditorium to see. The giant screens on either side of the stage, which had been displaying stock charts, now showed a close-up of her face. Her expression, one of heartbreaking composure. "I bought him this," she said, her voice starting to tremble, but with rage, not weakness. "A Patek Philippe watch, a symbol of timeless love." But that wasn't the real gift. She opened the box and took out the small silver frame. She held it up. The camera zoomed in, and the grainy image of the sonogram filled the screens. A collective gasp went through the audience. This was the real gift, she said, her voice breaking for a moment. "Our baby, our future." I sent it to his office, hoping to surprise him to share a moment of joy. She turned her gaze fully on Julian, her eyes locking with his. All the love she had ever felt for him was gone, replaced by a contempt so profound it was like a physical force. But I was not the only one who saw it. My husband's mistress, Cassandra Miller, a senior analyst he was sleeping with for over a year, opened it first. She saw the picture of my baby, the baby of the man who had promised to leave his wife for her, and she screamed. The auditorium erupted. The whispers turned into a roar of shock and scandal. This was better, more salacious than any rumor. This was a confession, a public crucifixion. He lied to me. Amelia's voice soared over the din filled with righteous fury. He fired his mistress to silence her. He took this beautiful gift, this symbol of our family, and he ordered it to be destroyed, to be hidden, so he could continue to live his lie. He stood in our home, looked me in the eye, and told me he loved it while secretly trying to erase its existence. She placed the sonogram picture on the podium, directly in front of Julian. Then she picked up the watch, the magnificent, priceless Patek Philippe Calatrava. My husband values beautiful, expensive things, she said, her voice dropping to a dangerously quiet level. He builds his life around them. He acquires them. He controls them. Women companies watches. It's all the same to him. And then, in a move that no one could have predicted, she drew back her arm, and with all her strength, she threw the Patek Philippe watch across the stage. It hit the far wall with a sickening crack and clattered to the floor. Its delicate mechanism shattered its timeless beauty, destroyed in an instant. The sound echoed through the silent, stunned auditorium. Amelia turned back to the microphone, her face a mask of triumphant, heartbreaking resolve. The assets of this man of this company may be vast, she declared, her voice ringing with the authority of a queen who had just reclaimed her throne. But his integrity is bankrupt, his loyalty is worthless. And as for my assets, the shares in this company that I own in my own name, a very significant portion, I believe, they will be on the market by the end of the day. I believe the term is a hostile takeover. I'm sure you all, as experts in the field, know what that means. She looked one last time at the broken man who had been her husband. His face was slack with shock, his empire crumbling around him on a stage of his own making. Without another word, Amelia Croft turned and walked off the stage, her back straight, her head held high. She did not look back. She walked out of the auditorium, out of the building, and out of the life that had almost destroyed her, leaving behind a storm of her own creation. The Queen had not just left the board, she had flipped the entire table. Amelia's story is a powerful reminder that the truth, no matter how deeply buried, always finds a way to the surface. It's a story of devastating betrayal, but also one of incredible strength and the fierce, unyielding power of a woman reclaiming her own narrative. The shattered watch was more than just a broken object. It was the sound of a gilded cage being smashed to pieces. What happens next? Does Julian's empire truly crumble? Does Amelia, with her newfound power and the impending birth of her child, find a new kind of happiness? The fallout from that day would echo for years to come. If this story captivated you, if you felt every moment of Amelia's pain and cheered for her ultimate triumph, please let us know in the comments. We want to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to hit that like button. Share this video with someone who loves a story of justice and resilience, and most importantly, subscribe to our channel for more gripping tales you won't want to miss. click the notification bell so you're the first to know when our next story drops. Thank you for listening.